Welcome to the Storytime cast, everybody. We're back. We're back already.
Hi.
Started and we're back. So hold hands and get a cup
This
of tea.
is a terrible intro.
No,
you
this
said
is-
about 17 times.
I know, because this is what freestyling looks like, and now I'm really conscious of me saying now. This is what freestyle.
Happy New
entertainment
Year.
is.
And we just spent 20 minutes talking about the Horus Heresy as well, so our mindset isn't quite... Yes, anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the.
You can
Storytime
edit this.
cast.
You can edit that out.
Yeah, no, I'll edit. I'll make it louder and more prominent because it's
Welcome
raw.
to the STD.
Welcome to the Storytime
Pod.
cast. There we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, if it wouldn't be the Storytime cast if it didn't have a little bit of chaos at the beginning, so there we go. Anyway, welcome back.
Which must... Yes.
Yeah, this is the second part
Yeah.
of a little two-parter that we're doing at the moment. If you watch the last part, then you'll know that we did the first 10 legions and their Primarchs. We're basically having a little look at what was the purpose of the legions, what was the purpose of the Primarch, what function did they have, why did the Emps want to make this specific person and their legion.
Biggie.
If you didn't watch the last episode, you need to stop right now, right? And you need to go back and watch that one, because otherwise we're just going to start halfway through. You're going to be like, what's all this? Why? Where's the first 10 legions and their Primarchs? And you don't want that. But
Stop. Hammer time.
Stop, go back, relax.
Yes.
And watch the original. Watch the first half of this. But we might
Or you
as well
could
just
watch this and then you could do 11 to 20, then go back for 1 to 10. You could technically. You don't have to stop, actually. Don't ignore that. But we're talking about the Primarchs and why the Emperor needed so many blades. Well, he needed lots of different blades on his Swiss Army knives. He needed the one to get the cork out of the bottle. He needed one to clip the toenails. So they all had a specific purpose. Some of the purposes overlapped, but some of them were very specific, yes.
Did he have a fish filleting knife on his Swiss Army knife? Because you get
fish
those.
filleting?
Or is it a scale remover? You
yeah.
get, like ones with fishing bits on them.
They still had those things on Swiss Army knives to take the stuff out of horses' hooves for years. Those ones.
Yeah.
I mean, who drives a horse anymore? Doesn't even have indicators. It's not roadworthy.
That's true, but you know what? I don't think that these motor cars are going to take off.
Yes.
I think the good old-fashioned horse is reliable. It runs on grass instead of all this fuel and stuff. I think these motor cars are a big big waste. They're a fad, and we'll go back to our horses soon enough.
Well, I'm still waiting for the Sinclair C5 to take off. Do you remember that?
It's a beautiful machine.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah,
you could play games off of your cassette tape. You could record.
No, what was the one? The trike thing. This thing. Anyway, moving on. Okay. Yeah, horses definitely the future.
All right, yeah, the future.
Right, okay, yeah. Comedy cul-de-sac. Let's reverse out of that.
Yeah,
where are we? What's going? How are you anyway? Are you okay? Did you have a lovely Christmas?
I'm good. I had a lovely Christmas and a happy New Year. What did we do? We just did. There was lots of fireworks on New Year's Eve out the back of our house. We live in like a valley, and it was like someone. It was like all the people put on a special fireworks display just for us. It was free because we saw it from our balcony.
Ah,
it was really nice. Did you have a nice?
That's
one?
nice. Yeah.
You do anything fun or special?
No.
Did you cry?
No, it's heresy. It's heretical. There's a demon. He comes round, infiltrates people's homes. No, nothing. Can't celebrate this. You're a worshipper of chaos. You're a warsmith, Chris. I'm Winter's SEO. That's
true.
I'm an Imperium player at heart. the Big E is the Big E for a reason, and we follow the imperial truth. We don't go in for any of these pagan things. No, I don't even have children.
Did you watch X-Files back in the day?
Yes, everyone watched X-Files.
Everyone watched X-Files.
Come on now.
Yeah. Do you remember
before
Eugene
Netflix
Coombs?
and stuff?
Yes. The guy, yeah. Do you think that Santa Claus is a bit like Eugene Coombs, and he can stretch his horrible hands through your vent and get in? Because I didn't have a chimney growing up, and he still made it in. So he must have got in somewhere.
Yeah.
Unless it was breaking an entry, but
psychic powers, things like that, related to Eugene. Maybe had some of that in his gene code. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. You know what we're going to do? We're going to spend a lot of time now talking about the 11th Legion. Yeah? Okay. It says here, records lost or destroyed. What does that mean? What happened to the 11th Legion?
So the Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, made 20 experiments, Warsmith Chris.
Yeah.
20 things in the pods. In order to harvest their gene seed to make his legions. 3 of them were a mistake. 3 of them failed. And 2 of them we know nothing about, because by the time of the Horus Heresy, those records were expunged. And the 11th, unfortunately, was one of the 3 that were a failure. We're going to get on. The second one was Legion 2, Legion 11, but we're going to get on to the third one as we count down 11 to 20.
Yeah. So, obviously, we can't say much about a legion that had all its records expunged.
Unstable gene seed, all sorts of things. They didn't clean up after themselves.
Yeah.
They were left-handed, something or other. So,
things.
Had to go.
Well, in that case, we've got to move on to a controversial figure.
Yes.
So the next legion along is the World Eaters and their Primarch Angron. I've been looking forward to this one because, as I said after in the post podcast chat last time, I talked to you about the fact that you had some strong words to say about Angron, about how he is the Emperor's. He's the failure of the bunch, right? He's the kid who didn't get a B in maths, and he was the kid that had to sit on the naughty step all the time. I'm going to let you just go on a little bit about Angron, because
you can let me rant.
Despite the fact that he's a big new dude, his Primarch status might not be up there. Go for it. You tell us.
Well, he isn't one of the 3 legions that failed. We're talking about Primarchs now. Yes. Of the 18 Primarchs that we know, he's the only Primarch who didn't end up taking over his entire planet by the time the Emperor met him. He was born in chains, lived in chains, and the Emperor essentially had to rescue him and his merry band of Spartacuses from getting wiped out by the High Riders. He would have died, essentially. So not only did he fail to subdue his planet, but if Big D hadn't turned up in the right time, at the right place, almost as if fate had decreed it, he would have died on the mountaintop with his brothers and things. He had the butcher's nails hammered into the meat of his skull very early on, which meant that he always felt pain. And the only time the pain would be released would be in the fury of war. Now, Quipster, who we know and love.
Yep, we know him.
The lovely little metrosexual that he is, the good-looking, gene clean. He's a nice guy, Quipster, okay? But he's got some funny ideas. He thinks Angron's original purpose, Angron's original thing was brotherhood and healing and coming together and stuff like that. And I'm sorry to say, but as in most things, Quipster's wrong in this. Because before they were the World Eaters, they were called the Warhounds. And they were called the Warhounds by the Emperor himself. The Emperor gave them that nomenclature because a lot of the pre-Legion names, some of them were given by the Imperial Army or the other legions, but this was given by the Emperor because, well, a couple of things notable about the World Warhounds beforehand. A lot of the other legionaries were taken specifically from specific places.
Yep.
So in certain hives, for example, they might take these guys are really stealthy, so we'll take them, and these guys are. But the Warhounds, their legionaries came from all over Terra. There was no particular special thing about where they were located, and their gene seed was particularly temperate, stable at the start, no particular issues. But they were known to be absolutely ferocious in battle. And and savage in battle, and tear apart the enemies like proper flesh tearing before the flesh tearers were even a thing. And because of their absolute savagery, and they seem to enjoy it as well. They seem to enjoy just literally ripping apart their foes. The Emperor called them the Warhounds. So that's the gene seed of Angron running through their veins. In the prehistory, pre-Angron, we know there wasn't much. They're not like the Death Guard, who were definitely noble and brothers and honourable. They were a mongrel breed, and they were absolutely savage.
Right, okay.
And the Legion, quite clearly, was bred to be executioners, just like the Space Wolves.
Right.
And then Angron got hold of them and hammered the nails into their brains. And they got even more savage.
Yeah, so with the Space Wolves, I'd say, so we know the Space Wolves being literal hounds in that sense, right? They're the Emperor's hounds sent out to hunt down the Emperor's foes, and the way they make war is also very savage. The World Eaters are more like are more like a general pack of guard dogs or hounds or something that were designed to slaughter wholesale and enjoy it, right? Because there's mysticism that accompanies Space Wolves, right?
Yeah.
There's a depth to their murder, and there's obviously that we've got that on-running Viking theme that goes through them. So there's kind of like ceremony to it, right? And there's things to it, but is World Eaters literally just the heavies that you send round to beat someone up to get their money? Were they the Legion that is not very undelicately going to just smash someone's face in for the sake of it?
Well, there's a difference between there is a subtle but distinct difference between the Space Wolves and the Warhounds, the World Eaters. The World Eaters were sent to destroy entire civilizations, for genocide, to destroy stuff. That was their one thing. And you could argue that the Space Wolves, that's their one thing as well, but it's not. The Space Wolves were bred to be set apart from the other legions. They distanced themselves from the other legions on purpose. And the Space Wolves, they describe it very clearly in the Prospero Burns book. So there are lines that other legions won't cross. Mm-hmm. There are lines that the Ultramarines won't cross. There are lines the Wordbearers won't cross. But there would even be lines that the World Eaters wouldn't cross. Things that the World Eaters wouldn't do. And the Space Wolves were bred apart. They were the Emperor's executioners. They knew that the reason why they kept themselves separate from the other legions, they knew that they would do and could be ordered to do those things, whatever those dark and terrible things are, that other legions wouldn't do. There is no line for the Space Wolves. If the High King called upon them to do X, Y, Z, they would do X, Y, Z, and they would enjoy doing it. Whereas the World Eaters are a tsunami. They're a forest fire. That's different. It's different in temperament. It might be the same in execution, but it's different in temperament. Okay.
And obviously the dark things and the lines we're talking about crossing here, we're referring specifically to basically killing your own kin, as it were.
Killing your own kin, or worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Killing your mate's dad.
The Warhounds.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so in that sense as well, we're saying that, I mean, Angron got a pretty rough start, let's be honest, but
yes,
the other Primarchs did all have I mean, all the Primarch books tell of their achievements and how they kind of rose up on their respective planets, and some led rebellions and did great deeds, some cleansed the land of evil, and some were just really good at making war and things like that. And and Angron was kind of, he had his hands tied behind his back to do that, and he remained enslaved and never really broke free of that, because, like you said, once the Butcher's Nails came in and once he fell to chaos, he's always pretty much just been a slave to someone else. He's never really stood out. He's
just a big disappointment.
Yeah,
it shows just how forgiving and loving that the Emperor is. That when he found Angron, he allowed him to live. He allowed him to carry on. There's some nuggets in the Horus Heresy as well, where he tries to actually remove the Butcher's Nails and has a conversation with, I think it's Vulcan, about it, and he can't remove the nails without killing him. It would kill him, but he allows Angron to continue, and Angron continues to wage war, not for the Emperor, but in spite of the Emperor, because he's good at it and he wants to kill her. He's essentially on a suicidal campaign trying to kill himself and his legion as quickly as possible when he gets given them. And as soon as the opportunity comes up to turn traitor, see, that's the one thing about him as well. So during the start of the heresy, he hadn't been touched by chaos. He hadn't had an anathema in him, or picked up a sword, or word bearers whispering in his ear. Horus asked him to change side, and he went, "Yeah, sure, well, let's go." He's an angry boy. So should have been put down at birth.
Do you think then that the Emperor, with all his knowledge and understanding, was he short-sighted with Angron, or did he want to have a suicidal Primarch with a disposable legion? Could he not see that?
That's a big question, because it comes down to what the Emperor knew and what the Emperor's intentions are. And it's always very vague about what the Emperor knew, but he knew a lot, and it's all very vague about what his intentions are. But we know his primary intention was to carve out a piece of the galaxy free from Psychers, free from Xenos, free from... And having a suicidal maniac rampage and kill himself and kill his legion while doing it, that serves the Emperor's goal. So
that's true.
I think the Emperor knew exactly what he was up with and thought, yeah, okay, I'll wind up that thing and let it go.
Yeah,
and he did.
Maybe we've got the benefit of being the readers of a virtual world and a virtual and a story that's come from people, but. To me, it seems like the Emperor's kind of... He's met all of his Primarchs, right? And they're not particularly written in a subtle way that suggests that they aren't quite emotionally up and down, and they all have moments where they have outbursts and they can feel petty, they get in trouble, they're like naughty children sometimes, they dabble in... entire realities that they shouldn't be dabbling in, and all this kind of stuff. If you've got a family of superheroes and they are effectively competing with each other in a friendly family sort of way, like, check out what your brothers are doing, your brothers are all going to the coolest uni, you need to go there too, kind of thing. And then you've got one guy who is completely out of that thing, right? He's completely he hasn't become a superhero. He's become a victim for a long time and is probably quite disturbed. I wonder at what part was it not... I mean, this goes... I think this leads into a much bigger conversation that's for another day, about the idea that did the Emperor know that that the Horus Heresy was going to happen way in advance, or was it already planned that this was going to happen? But I just think allowing that much of a force to go on within the context of a family of superheroes was dicing with a definite... I mean, he knew why Magnus wasn't supposed to dabble with the warp, And
yes,
it must have been a thought that inevitably something is going to... Angron is going to have to face this, and he has got no reason and no... he hasn't built up the strength to just turn around and be like, no, I'm a noble Primarch and I won't do that, or, you know, as we expect from some of the other more heroically cast Primarchs. So, I mean...
Well, I think... well, there is a particular book. Again, I disagree on Quipster on his reading of the twist in the book. But there is a particular book, First Lord of the Imperium, which suggests that the Emperor planned the heresy. Mm-hmm. You've got to also think that one of his greatest gifts, and he had many gifts, but one of his greatest gifts that the Perpetuals talk about all the time, and even the Eldar talk about, is his far-seeing. He could see the future, penetrate the ways of the warp and future paths like no other psyker could. So I think it'd be very difficult to argue that he didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
It would be very difficult to argue as well that after he stole fire from the gods in Moloch to make his Primarchs, that he may have made a deal with the ruinous powers at the time, or at least known that the ruinous powers would take... There's 4 of the great gods, that 4 of his Primarchs would be taken. And he thought it was a price worth paying. There's many prices that the Emperor would have paid. He would have sacrificed every single human except 100 of them if he knew that out of the trillions and trillions and trillions of sacrifices, and there's only a few hundred left at the end of a great galactic war, that the entire galaxy was sanitized and free of everything, but the humans would live with only a couple of hundred left, and even this might be the most terrible outcome. He would be happy with that, because then humanity would be safe for the next. He was okay with that. His morality and his far sight, and it's difficult to figure out the morality when it comes to superhumans like I don't know, Einstein or people like that. It's their morality and their way of thinking is so beyond the scope of mere mortals such as us. And then you get to the Emperor's level. So I think he knew the future. I think the heresy was planned. I think there's a whole big discussion we could go down here, and I think Angron was a price he was willing to pay. He could have executed him. He did execute a couple of legions, as we know, and he nearly executed a third. But he let Angron just go.
Perhaps it was you could have the last pick in the school football team. Maybe Angron was there. Yeah, you can have
That's
Angron.
not to say that I don't like Angron's story arc. It is glorious. Not much of an arc, but his counterpoints about the Imperial truth are really pertinent, and his reappearance in 40k today is absolutely outstanding. The story is great. His Primarch book is good. We needed a character like this in the Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
One of them, not every single one of them could have been a super ninja master that passed passed every exam, passed the driving test first time, all that sort of thing. One of them was bound to be a bit chopped up, and it turned out to be Angron.
Yeah. And in terms of their of them in the game as well, I think World Eaters are sort of archetypal 40k. You know, the idea that you've got the butcher's nails and you're permanently absolutely pissed off, and you just carve things up is very much in keeping with the setting of the universe. So I'm glad they're there. It's just interesting to see where he stands in this.
It's great.
Right, after Angron, we have a very interesting character, really, in terms of the story, both back in Horus Heresy times and the current 40k setting, and that is Robute Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines.
Robute Guilliman.
Yes. Sorry, you go. You start.
So I mean, he was designed to guard the distant shore to build empire. So the Ultramarines had a number of nomenclatures before they were called the Ultramarines, but the Imperial Army called them the Warborn. and they're noticeable because they were taken from a number of places on Terra prior to the unification. And these places on Terra never capitulated and were almost entirely annihilated by the Emperor's forces. And this is where they brought the Ultramarines from. And there's 3 or 4 places, I forget the specific names, the hive cities and the regions, but there's 3 or 4 specific things. And they were noted to have the perfect balance of aggression, like every Space Marine should, and restraint. Before they met Guilliman. So they're ultra aggressive where they needed to be, but also restraint, which was curious. They were also noted to work well with allies and also in independent operations. They'd often be sent off to do their own things because their success rate during independent operations, when not attached to other legionaries or the Emperor or things like that, was very, very high. Notably in their command of other forces as well.
Would this be...
And then Guilliman.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, in terms of the Legion, you're probably about to say something like this anyway, but I thought I'd interject quickly.
What was one?
So do we think that the Ultramarines were essentially the long-term vision Legion in terms of what we know they have become and what Rabute Guilliman is doing now in the grim darkness of the far future? Were they the handpicked to be the inheritors of what was supposed to happen, or what would come if the Emperor
there's 2 schools of thought here, and one school of thought is there was a role for Astartes after the Great Crusade, and then the other school of thought is there wasn't a role for Astartes after the Great Crusade, and he would do away with them just like he did away with the Thunder Warriors. Again, our friend and saviour Quipster thinks that there was a role for all the Astartes after the Great Crusade. I'm not so sure. And looking that far into the future, seen as the Emperor didn't manage to get as far along the road with his plan that he intended, I don't know if we can answer that question. We can't answer it with any clarity. What we can answer, though, is that the Legion had a clear defined role, like some of the other legions had a clear defined role. And they were bred and they excelled in independent operations. They were bred and they excelled in commanding other forces as well, high numbers of auxilia and things like that, that they showed restraint. And it was their job to guard the distant shore. It was their job to be the outpost on the other side of the galaxy, which could operate independently and loyally on its own. We can say that much about them. And as far as their gene scene goes, and as far as their Primarch goes, they played that role perfectly. They were formed into chapters, but not chapters as we know them today. Their chapters had between 1,000 and 2,500 Marines in each. And each chapter was built that way to operate independently. That's how they got split up later on. So Guilliman restructured in that way and built upon their ability to operate independently, and built each chapter so it was its own individual. I mean, a chapter these days, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, it's all 1,000. Imagine a chapter which is 2,500, which is much bigger then. So they could do everything that was called upon them to be done. Their gene seed is remarkably resilient, and they were thought to be the largest legion, though there is another contender than that, but they were thought to be the largest legion by far, doubling, and in the case of some of the more legions that took a lot of attrition, quadrupling the size of other legions, up to over somewhere in the region of 250,000 of them before the start of the Horus Heresy. So they were independent, they were strong, they were the tactfulness and all that sort of stuff that came through the teachings of Guilliman. But not only could they guard the distant shore, but they excelled in guarding the distant shore and went forward and multiplied. So they were one of the great success stories of what the Emperor wanted for them during their heresy, during the Crusade, what their job was to be after the Crusade, whether the notion is that there was a longer vision and the Emperor wanted a Praetorian, like a Space Marine king on each individual planet, or on each individual, or a company here or a company there, looking after all the star systems and all the sectors across the galaxy. If that was indeed his goal, then the Ultramarines would have definitely excelled in that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the Imperium was made for the Space Marines. The Imperium was made for man. Yeah. Corax even said so. Corax was the first to say it, and a number of other Primarchs said it. The Imperium wasn't built for them. So whether he intended them to stay around at the end, we shall find out. Or whether he intended them to burn out during a heresy that he had planned, we don't know. Maybe he did intend some of them to hang around and look after planets, a few here or there.
Yeah.
Maybe he intended the Ultramarines always, a few hundred of them or a few thousand or whatever, to guard the distant shore. Yeah. Who knows?
That's what I was about to say.
They were the.
They
were the Imperium without the Imperium that could have stood and withstood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they alone seem to be not alone. Them a handful of Astartes seem to have those roles between them that are good for running a peaceful kingdom. Elements of the Imperial Fist, elements of the Ultramarines, even elements of the Dark Angels to a certain extent, could be used to run something.
Guilliman also
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, the intention could have been to have a number of these, Imperial Fists in particular, definitely. Guilliman also trained them, so they were also supposed to be scholars. So as well as the art of war, the Codex Astartes, he also trained them, and it was very important for Ultramarines to learn about material matters and ruling and governmentship and governing and things like. So the scholarly aspect of the Ultramarines, Guilliman certainly had a goal for them, and Guilliman's goal was there would be a chapter master in charge of each of his 500 worlds, of the 500 worlds of Ultramar. He clearly had a role for each and every single one of them. That was Guilliman's plan, and there are other Space Marines and other legions who could have fit that role as well, but the Emperor never chose that plan, never enacted upon it in all the time before he got locked up on the throne.
Because also, if you think about it, Astartes are uniquely positioned to be able to run. They're kind of subjugating humans to a certain extent, but their lifespans without war are vast, right? And what they can know and what they can learn and what they can perform makes them uniquely suited to be rulers in that way, world rulers. So it would have made sense to keep some around for that purpose, because if you leave humans, if you create an empire for humans, it doesn't matter if you're the emperor. You're not trying to make a religion out of yourself, right? We know that the cycle of humanity is that people will jostle for positions. Humanity is weak in that way. As a mass concept, it will always find a way to want more and take more and need more, and therefore internal struggle and tyrants and all that kind of stuff comes out of it. But actually, if you have these things ruled by these semi-immortal, highly efficient, gene-wrought warriors, then you have something in place to keep that in check, because who's going to go up against a palace full of Astartes who are probably myth by that point? They don't need to go out in public. Here's the place that rules.
No, the argument's good. I mean, they're functionally immortal as well. So going up against a superhuman warrior who's been sat there for 5,000 years, who has 5,000 years of knowledge and experience, it does sound like a very strong argument, except you wouldn't need them. If the Emperor's plan came to fruition, we'd be going through the Emperor's webway, so you don't need astropaths, you don't need psychers, There's no religion, so the tides of the warp fade away. There'd be no Xenos. They had all been wiped out. So there is no pressure from the Psyker. There is no pressure from the demon or the witch, or very, very little, hardly any. All the Xenos races have been exterminated. Why would you still need superhuman space marines Astartes? And then you'd also have a golden age of technology as well, a new golden age of science, of understanding, of railgun lasers on asteroids in space, of AI, not AI, but machine learning constructs on the planet that can root out. But we'd all live longer. We'd all be a couple of 100 years older. We'd all have rejuvenation. We could all end up going that way or that way or that way. It's a brand new utopia. Everything would be perfect if only those dastardly kids didn't come along and spoil everything. It would have been. You wouldn't have needed superhuman soldiers to guard over. Over it. You didn't need them during the Great Age, the golden age of technology. You wouldn't need them once Big E did his thing, but his thing didn't happen.
Yep.
Anyway, it's very sad. There's a couple of books about it. You should read it.
Yeah.
Called The Horus Heresy.
The Horus Heresy, yeah. I've heard good things. So I mean, Gilliman was, we know what his what he was supposed to be, and it turned in, what his purpose was, and it turns out that in the 41st millennium, he is the Imperial Regent. He is he is taking over that position, and whether it was planned or not, he's kind of doing the thing. And from what it seems as well, ultramarine planets seem like possibly the best of a bad bunch. If you're going to be a human and you've got to live on a planet, they seem better than other ones.
If you grow up on the 500 worlds, it's about as good as it can get in 30k and 40k. Mind you, 30k Prospero was, the Planet Sorceress was. There was in 40k. If you grew up somewhere in Macragge, then or in the 500 worlds, you're probably on for a good. You're probably on for a good time. The other thing to note about the Ultramarines as well is their Imperial Guard armies. I've forgotten the name, but the Macragge Guard. I forget what they're called. But they were expertly trained, and they were given the best kit, and they were given resources, and they were given their guard regiments were some of the best guard regiments. They had their own Titan foundries out there, and their own Forge Worlds looking after them. They were there to guard the distant shore and be regents. And be regents as well. So it's almost like the Emperor knew a heresy might come, and a great rift might cut the galaxy in two in 30k, and that he might need someone on the other side of the galaxy that can hold things together for a few years. It's almost like he planned it, right?
Anyway, enough about Gilliman.
Yeah,
people joke that
let's go on to some of the bad guys.
They joke that Ultramarines are boring, but they're really not. I joke that Ultramarines are boring the same way I joke about Imperial Fists, but they're not in terms of what their actual place would be. If you're watching it as a film, the Ultramarines would be the people that you probably identify with the most out of the superhumans, because they're least awful to one another. And you'd be like,
they're the poster boys for a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and they've got a very Roman thing going on, and it's no coincidence that the whole running of an empire is their theme. Next up, we have an interesting lad. I haven't.
Yep.
His book came out recently, didn't it, Mortarian?
His book did come out recently.
I haven't read it yet.
It's an interesting one. I know some people really like it. I'm again one of those that I think it's good, but not great. Okay. It does get Mortarian's side over. Very, very well. What his point of view is better than perhaps in the Horus Heresy books. I mean, he sees himself as a judgment. He's got Silence, the Grim Reaper, and if he is sent to a planet, the Death Guard will reap death. It's like the Emperor. If the Death Guard get unleashed on something, then judgment has been cast upon you. This is very much in the book, and so Mortarian sees that nothing is because some of the other, I mean, in that book as well, it's Horus and Lorgar and Sanguinius are basically having conversations with him, and it follows some of his early life. And Horus, Sanguinius, and Lorgar. And Lorgar comes across as the good guy in this. This is way before all the bad. He's trying to mediate between the difference, and he's Mortarion's like, no, there is nothing he won't do. He won't go far enough in order to deliver the Emperor's judgment. If the Emperor is sending the Death Guard somewhere, that means that species is sentenced to death. And Horus and Sanguinius are going, that's a bit too much. You know, some of the things that you're doing there are, you're slaughtering absolutely everyone.
So let's go.
Well, not only that, not in the World Eaters kind of ways, but like nuking planets, exterminating planets. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's biological, chemical, nuclear, whatever it is. He's using whatever it takes to wipe these mofos out.
Yeah.
And he's like, nope, I know what I'm bred for, and I am bred to bring death, and I am judgment.
Yeah. So before that book came out, he was one of the Primarchs that we kind of already knew his whole story, from various sources.
He doesn't like Psychers very much, does he?
No, he doesn't. No. So essentially, if we go back to the purpose of the Legion just quickly before we get into Mortarion's story, the Dusk Raiders were the kind of special forces trained to all-terrain vehicle Legion, right? They were trained to be able to go to really, really shitty places. Inhospitable places and raid people and do a good job of it and survive it, which was lucky.
Yeah, they were known for their survivability and their endurance. They were recruited from the tribes of old Albia, and they were very honourable. They were one of during the Unification Wars. Albia was an empire which even the Emperor was like, ooh, this is going to be a bit of a tough nut to crack. Because the warriors of old Albia were very honourable, very brotherly, very brotherhood-centred. In fact, they shared many of the traits that the modern Imperium shares with brotherhood and honour and ultramarines and things like that. So the Emperor, surprising all of his followers, went directly himself and had a word with the rulers of old Albia and said, look, we're in alignment with all of these things. Why don't you join us? And they did. And they joined. And from this group of honourable, brotherly empire, they raised up the Dusk Raiders, so known because they would launch at dusk when the sun came down. Their reputation preceded them. They were so good at sowing terror, and basically the sun went down, and when the sun came up again, everyone was dead. And their reputation preceded them so much that entire armies would quit the field as soon as the sun went down, knowing that the Dusk Raiders were coming to get them. But yeah, their gene seed was, so that's their psychology. But the gene seed, it's survival, endurance, hostile environments, things like that.
I was going to say, which is very fortunate because is it barbarous? So I don't say
barbarous.
Barbarous. It's very fortunate because Barbarous is a horrendous planet of poisonous gases and horrible terrain, and essentially, whereas we were discussing earlier about how Angron was kept prisoner and was defeated essentially by the local tyrants kicking about the place. Mortarion was the opposite of that. He actually pulled together the locals and fought back against mountain tyrants and became a hero in that sense. And I think that's where he pulled them together with farming tools and stuff, which is why he started using the scythe. Something. There's some little thing in there about the scythe.
I mean, he started off working for one of them, but then switched sides, and Viva the Revolution raised up against them. And then the end of the story is, because basically if you go up into the mountains on Barbarous, it gets more and more toxic until eventually it's so toxic and so acidic that it'll burn the flesh and boil your lungs and your eyeballs will dribble out and blah, blah, blah. There was one last badass that he had to kill, and he pulled together his most loyalist, his most loyalist guys in this proto power armor that they had, and assaulted the last bastion, the last mounting fortress. But before he assaulted them, he said, "You are my death guard. We will continue fighting upwards until all tyrants are destroyed." And so when he, during that lovely excursion, I won't spoil it for anyone, but during that lovely excursion, when eventually the Emperor finds him, well, he called and he was given the Dusk Raiders, he called them the Death Guard because he was continue fighting upwards, up into the universe, to keep going and going and going and going until all tyrants were overthrown. He hated tyrants, he hated psychers, he is actually, he's a complex and trusting, forgiving. He's quite well written.
I really like it.
The last book in the Horus Heresy before the Solar War, The Buried Dagger, is perhaps the best book of Mortarion. He's a very interesting character, and his story is one of tragedy, actually.
Yeah.
Mortarion
is really is quite well written throughout the Horus Heresy. Just don't include the way he's written when he becomes a demon Primarch down the line, because it all goes out the window, apart from in Lords of Silence.
Well, the 40k books and the Plague War and stuff, they're all a bit... So the 40k, the modern era of 40k books it's a bit more cartoony, a bit more it's just high fiction, high fantasy. We know that some of the heresy writers are turning now their attention towards this Second Crusade, what's happening now, and that Games Workshop have announced and teased that they want to do something Horus Heresy-esque with what's happening now.
On scale,
and I imagine... Yeah, because, I mean, what is Aaron Dembski writing now? What is Craig Wright writing now? What are Dan Abnett writing now? Are they going back to all their individual projects? I mean, it would be nice to get the closing of the trilogy for the Talon of Horus and stuff like that. But I think, there's a difference in scale and scope between the Plague War books and whatever they call the 40k books and the 30k books.
Yeah.
There's a bit more pantomime villain going on now, so I can forgive that because
you read Lords of Silence though?
Yeah.
I thought
it has got some more.
Yeah,
that's the best Death Guard book. Yeah.
The bits and pieces of Mortarion there, as a demon Primarch that show him as this kind of. I love the whole themes of just not being angry anymore. I love the way that Chaos was approaching that, and I could go into that on its own.
Yeah.
It was a very, very unique take on something that's difficult to write, like snot and bogeymen who are all about poo and wee. It's difficult to write them in a really interesting and unique way, and that book delivers it entirely.
It does.
But like you said, Mortarion is an interesting character, the way he's written in the 30k, and the way he hands over his legion is also a bit of a tragedy as well. I don't know how much we go into spoilers for all these things, but
I don't think we can.
No,
but I mean, his story is one of a fall, isn't it? Fall from grace, a fall from
and he's a proper hero, and Typhon is a good guy and a hero, and they're all very honourable still. They're all very decent blokes.
Typhon's see, the Buried Dagger did a bit of. Typhon could be considered the voice behind the throne. He could be considered a bit. So you say he's a good guy?
No, not a good guy. The way he's presented earlier on is that so different from the absolute monstrosity that he becomes. It's very interesting to see that downfall so far.
Yeah.
Even more so than Mortarion, in the fact that Mortarion is what he is, and he becomes a very, very powerful thing afterwards. But Typhon rises up from the ranks to be something a bit like how Abaddon does it as well. He's kind of the Death Guard Abaddon, isn't he? But they become much more than what they were. But I don't want to gush too much.
Well, he's the Lord of the Destroyer Hive. He fell to Nurgle before Mortarion did.
Yes.
So Yeah, it's a good story. It's wrapped up quite well, but the Death Guard's role is chemical warfare, is hostile environments. They're supposed to survive, like the Iron Tenth. Like we said in the previous one, there's a couple of legions that have the same role, and the Death Guard and the Iron Hands' role is to survive where other legions would not.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And Nathaniel Garrow is a fantastic guy.
And Garen is fantastic. See, this is the other thing about the loyalists that came away from the 4 OG legions. There was a good third of the Dusk Raiders of the Death Guard that would not turn to Mortar and would not turn their back on the Emperor. And Nathaniel Garrow is one of the best characters in the Horus Heresy, and Straight Arrow Garrow did not change, and there's a number of the Death Guard would not change. I love that about it, because of the loyalists, because of the honourable thing, because deep in their core they believed in the Imperium, they believed in brotherhood, they believed in the noble sacrifice, they believed in they would call a straight fight. They would say, it was good.
Just a little quick side note.
I'm reining myself in there, otherwise I'd run down a rabbit hole about Garrow, and I don't want to run down a rabbit hole about Garrow.
I'm trying not to run down a rabbit hole. I'm just going to say this one thing, because one of the things I wanted to say is that I think in the next episode we're actually going to focus a bit more on Chaos, because we haven't really looked at what Chaos is up to during this side.
We just did Chaos. We just did the Dust Raiders.
We'll get more into Chaos in the next episode. But the interesting thing about Nurgle is the other the way that you are got by the other Chaos gods is resisting an emotion, or resisting an urge for something that we easily fall to. Nurgle is the opposite. Nurgle puts you in a state of extreme suffering and says it ends when you hand yourself over to me, right? This can all end. You'll feel great. Yeah. It's going to all end. And the way that operates is different, because it really can prey on people who don't have something deeply corrupt about them in the first place that it preys on. It doesn't bring out that person who's extremely brutal and evil and aggressive and savage and amplify that, and then they fall to Khorne, or lustful and greedy, and they fall knowledge and power, I want it, and all this kind of stuff. It says to you, you're going to feel so bad that you have this choice, and by bad it's like things are melting inside of you. So the way you get got by Nurgle is interesting and different, and that's also part of this tragedy, I think, of the Death Guard and their fall.
Oh yeah.
And it makes Lords of Silence even better when you get to some of the exploring the themes of how Death Guard feel in the 45th after 10,000 years, what they feel like. It's very interesting. And
if you like Death Guard, and you like Chaos, if you like reading about Chaos, then the Lords of Silence is one of the best Chaos books in 40k, because it doesn't have much Mortaran in it. It's more about the Death Guard and their and what they feel and what they think and how they operate in 40k, and it does a good job. It doesn't turn into cartoon characters. It gives them agency. It's highly recommended, and it's a good standalone book as well. You can pick it up, you can read it, you can have a good time, and you can put it down again. Yeah, man.
Right, the next Primarch is another fantastic, interesting character that I adore. Not just because I side with Chaos stuff, but Magnus the Red is important for so many reasons, and the Thousand Sons are important for so many reasons in the setting. They are a huge part of the Horus Heresy and the story and the state of play today as well.
Yes, the Thousand Sons, not known by any other name, and one of the last legions to be brought into maturity. They didn't actually see active service until after the unification of Terra and Luna and the Sol system. They actually came into the fray quite late. And for the first 10, 20 years, no genetic anomalies at all. But there's lots of strange portents and ill omens and mistakes and happenstances happened around during the time of their creation. And it was about a decade in, they started showing psychic potential. And it was a good 20 or 30 years after that until they first started showing the flesh change, where they just erupted into these... It's like Chaos Spawn, but even worse. Chaos Spawn that can't fight or do very much. The flesh change. And they managed to keep it a secret from almost everyone for a long period of time. But eventually it came out amongst the other legions. The other legions found out about the flesh change. And their tens of thousands, 50s of thousands, maybe 100,000, got whittled down and whittled down and whittled down because they kept succumbing to the flesh change because the gene seed in them was so unstable. And they're the third legion out of the 20 that was a failure.
Yep.
2 of the legions never made it to the Horus Heresy, and their records are expunged. And this legion was down to 1,000 before Magnus was found. And there were calls because of their psychic potential, and we don't suffer the witch to live, and because of the flesh change, there was calls growing for this legion to be expunged from the records as well. And if Magnus had came along a couple of years later, even 6 months later, then there might have been 3 legions expunged from the Imperial records. So when people talk about the lost 2 legions, we know that 1 was executed because Lehman Russ said the Emperor's executions have been sent before. We know that 1 was executed. But the second one, I suspect that it met a fate similar to the Thousand Sons, or completely dissimilar to the Thousand Sons, but similar in the sense that the gene code in it wasn't stable enough to ensure the longevity of the Legion over time. And then there's 2 visions of Magnus at the throne room talking to the Emperor right at the very end. And one has him begging, and one has a different version of events. And in the different version of events, the Emperor even says, I couldn't have fixed them. We'll give you another... 3 legions failed. 3 legions went nuclear. And only 1 was saved by Magnus just in time. When he found them, he said, "You are my 1,000 sons." And he set about to fix the flesh change. One of the things the Emperor said to him was, "You do not go further than this point when you fly across the Imperium, fly across the warp. There are lines out there. Do not go further than this." And we all know about the Emperor's decrees. When the Emperor says something, he expects it to be followed out with impunity, no matter how ridiculous it is. And the difference between the good Primarchs and the bad Primarchs, the difference between Nathaniel Garrow, for example, if the Emperor said to him, "Here's the apple on the tree, do not take it," Garrow would stand beneath that tree and not even look at it and kill anyone who comes to it. If the Emperor told him that, then that's it. But there are some Primarchs out there, and this is one of them, where the Emperor said, "Here's the lines, don't cross it." He went merrily across the line, crossed it in a big way, and fixed the flesh change amongst his legion by making pacts with a dark entity.
So this poses a big question, Winters. So the purpose of this one is what was the tool on the Swiss Army knife that Magnus was created for, and his 1,000 sons? What was their purpose? Because this is a mistake that happened afterwards. So what was their original purpose?
Okay, so let's say that the Emperor made 20 knives on his Swiss Army knife. And 2 of the knives did X and Y, and we don't know what that purpose was because they've been expunged.
It was the fish
But
scale.
one of the purposes, clearly with the 1,000 Sons, was psychic warfare. Because there are psychics, there are witches, and there are demons. Maybe one of the lost Primarchs was also psychic warfare times 10. Maybe there was a psychic warfare 1, another psychic warfare 1, and another psychic... Maybe, here's a thought. Say 3 of them were bred for psychic warfare, just like 2 of the legions were bred for attrition, just like 2 of the legions were bred for... exterminatus type stuff. Just maybe he bred 2 legions for psychic warfare, but one of them was so extreme that had to get cut away quite early. And this is And Magnus was psychic warfare, but with loads of vanilla whipped in there as well to bring it all the way down. But it still didn't add enough vanilla, and that one would have been expunged if Magnus hadn't been found as well.
Very interesting idea.
So that's that's clearly the role of the Thousand Sons. That was clearly the Emperor's goal. And when he found out just how far they'd been crossing lines and doing it, the judgment of the trial of Magnus, or the Council of Nicaea, he said, no more. I told you not to go that far. No more. So he said it back then. He said it in the day. There was a task for these guys to do. There was a role for them to play. But Magnus had crossed the line, and then his entire legion had crossed the line. And his poison had spread in amongst his Thousand Sons. And the wolves were sent to Prospero to return them to Terra for censure. And then Horus got in the way, and we know the story, what happened next. But yeah, if other things had happened in other ways, they would have probably been expunged from the records as well, like the other two.
I really like
not
that
probably.
idea.
I think it almost certainly, definitely.
I really like the idea that yes, there is the mirror to Thousand Sons missing, and that could well be because they were the Uber psychers, and maybe the concept all along was to whittle down these different flavours of Primarch and Astartes until just the ones that worked out well were left.
Well, two of them clearly didn't work out well, right? Yeah.
So okay. So
and this guy didn't work out well as well. The interesting thing about Magnus, which is quite good that you get in the Thousand Sons novel, is he actually had long conversations with the Emperor before he was born. So back when they were in their gestation pods, before they were scattered across the galaxy and met the Emperor for the first time, Magnus was a being of such psychic power and psychic energy. They had long conversations with the Emperor, philosophical, scientific. He flew across the great ocean with the Emperor. He knew him really, really well. He knew the Emperor before all of his siblings, had massive conversations with him before all of his siblings. And the Emperor said to him back then, don't go this far. And he did.
He broke the rules.
He turned one eye inwards, the Cyclops, the Red King. He turned one eye inwards, and so he was half blind to the truth out there.
Okay. The next legion, the Lunar Wolves.
Sons of Horus.
The Sons of Horus.
Do you know where they got their name from?
What, the Lunar Wolves?
Yeah.
Because I know where they got the name Sons of Horus from.
Well, tell us where they get the name Sons of Horus from.
Because their dad was Horus Lupercal.
Yes.
Why were they called the Lunar Wolves? Was it anything to do with Horus Lupercal, or...?
No.
Right.
So, way back, again, right at the Unification Wars, there's the pacification of Luna, and the 16th Legion were sent along with the Death Guard to take on the Selena cults, the gene cults of Luna. And they were so ferocious and destructive, destroying thousands, tens of thousands of years of knowledge, of history, of libraries, of science, of the, wrecking it as they went. But there's a famous line where the Selena cults, the cults of the Selena, asked the Emperor to call off his wolves because of the destruction that they were wreaking. And so from that day onwards, they were called the Lunar Wolves.
Yes.
Them and the Death Guard, pacification of Luna. They excelled. They were the tip of the spear. Shock assault, decapitation. Horus himself. This is one of those few legions that slots perfectly in to the Primarch. The stuff that the Legion got up with is the stuff that Horus absolutely excelled at and wanted to do when they met. There wasn't much adjustment. Horus believed that the only good war was a quick war. And the quickest war possible was the Savage Strike, the Shock Assault, which wipes out, hits Terra. So the Space Marines come down to Earth right now, and they wipe out NORAD, and they wipe out all of the parliaments from all around the world. So it would only take a couple of space marines
Yeah.
to take down all the nuclear bunkers in the UN. They just come down, hit all the places of government and power as quickly as possible, wipe them all out. And how long would it take a space marine to do that now with drop pods? And I mean, an hour.
Yeah.
And then it's over. The war's over. But kill them utterly, kill them brutally, kill them quickly. And so shock assault, decapitation strikes, things like that. That's the Lunar Wolves, the Sons of Horus. The Sons of Horus name was given to him after the triumph of Ullanor, because Horus himself slew the last great war boss. Yep. And he actually saved the Emperor during the Ullanor campaign. Came to his side. The Emperor fell through a thing, loads of orcs going on. Horus jumped. There's a big Barney. The Emperor was in a little bit of trouble. Horus jumped in there, saved his day, blah, blah, blah. He said, right, you you need to name your legion the Sons of Horus now because, Yeah. Yeah, so that's what happened there.
Yeah. And
Horus, interestingly enough, his thing... because you've got the Emperor's executioner, you've got the Praetorian, you've got he who's to guide the distant shore, you've got the White Scars, never stop moving, be fastest. Horus's thing, I think he says it in the very first book, like one of the remembrance asks him, what are you, my lord? What part of the Emperor do you manifest? And Horus says, I am his ambition.
Nice. Very nice. Another spoiler for the next episode is that one of the things we're going to look at is actually from a question that's been given to us over on Discord, referring to the ways in which these Primarchs, obviously Horus, bring this up now because Horus is a big part of the Horus heresy. We have a question we're going to be talking about next time, but we're going to be looking at how these Primarchs were lured over to the other side, and how some easier than others, how some were tricked, how some were lured, and how some were enticed, or in some cases how some went, yeah, fuck it, go on then. But
how does someone ask a question on Discord, Warsmith Chris?
If you want to ask a question on Discord and inspire an entire episode like this person has, this person's called Sky, and we will be mentioning them and their question on the next episode. You can just head over to the Winters SEO Discord and find a little room there called the STC, which stands for Storytime Podcast. That's us. Ask a question in there. How does someone get access to the Winters SEO Discord, though, Winters SEO?
Well, you can become a YouTube channel member at Tier 2, unlocks the Discord. Tier 3 unlocks the Discord and all the extra videos in one. Tier 1 is just badges, loyalty badges and emojis and things like that. If you just want to sprinkle those little things in the comments that you put. But yeah, Tier 2 minimum to get in there. Yeah, thanks. That's good. That was a nice segue. That was like dead professional.
Segue. Yeah, and I just want to say as well is that we're serious. If you ask questions that give us enough brain juice movement, we will do episodes on them.
Yeah,
if that's what it takes, or we'll collate things into an episode. But ask away, and don't be frightened of asking weird and complex questions, because that's what we want to get our teeth into.
Because I'm weird. Warsmith Chris is complex. We will get to your questions, Sky. We will. Next one.
Yes. Anyway, we've got to get through some more Primarchs. There's so many of them.
Right, yes.
These ones are quite important. So the next one is Lorgar, Aurelian.
Lorgar and the Word Bearers.
Yes.
Known as the Imperial Heralds beforehand. But the Imperial Guard and the Solar Guard used to call... other Space Marines called them the Iconoclasts.
Yes.
But they were named the Imperial Heralds beforehand because... during the pacification, the unification wars, and which we discussed previously in our other one, must have taken... It's not a short period of time. Some of the histories put it down to 10, 20 years, but when you read into it, it is a good 100 years or so, the unification of Terra. You got to remember at the start, it didn't have much.
Yes.
They were not just... So they were zealots in preaching the imperial truth. They were always zealots at the very start. They took it to the nth degree, and they were called the Imperial Heralds because follow the imperial truth or we destroy you. And they were very careful. Well, and the Iconoclasts, the other Space Marine legions called them, because once they took over empires and kingdoms and hive cities, they went through them. They didn't retreat afterwards and lick their wounds or whatever. They went through them bit by bit by bit and found every bit of statuary, everything that was religious, every idol, every temple, and threw it all down and burnt the religious books and destroyed the temples. They were very zealot in making sure that all traces of human religion were wiped out after they went through. There was the imperial truth and no other, which of course was Lorgar's role. Lorgar was supposed to be the herald of the imperial truth, was supposed to be like a remembrancer, the prime iterator, the person to argue and debate and pull you over to the imperial side. He was supposed to make sure that the imperial truth. He was supposed to be, like you get those popular scientists like Brian Cox and things like that. The voice of, on YouTubes and on your TVs. You get these intelligent people. Well, I'll explain it to you, normal people, as best as I can.
Yeah.
Here's me explaining string theory and black holes to you guys. He was supposed to be that guy talking down to us to explain why religion bad and why science and advancement good.
Yes.
But he went a bit too far, didn't he?
Well, it turns out that Lorgar was, if you read his book was not one of my favourites, let's be honest, but it was still an interesting read. He is very good at doing that, actually. He's very good at convincing, becoming an icon for people to follow. It's just he is also written as a character who for a Primarch is much more easily swayed into different ways of thinking than perhaps you'd expect. And unfortunately, because he's so good at then convincing other people to go with what he's saying, he can be used as a puppet quite easily. And spoilers, a bad thing really does happen. Of the biggest, the first step of the downfall of the entire thing begins in his legion. But he does go the wrong way, and much like a mini version of what happened to on Prospero, there was retribution to be paid. There was a price to pay for stepping out of line. And talking of nice places to live, right? We talked about living in anything controlled by the Ultramarines or the primary worlds. Tisca on Prospero was a fantastic place to live during its heyday, and I can't remember the name of it now, but Lorgar built a really, really jolly good city as well.
Monarchia,
that's it, which was flattened by Gilliman. And this was another one of the... It's interesting to see, as we go through the people that were put down, the Primarchs were all created by one super being, and he is using them to unfold the ones that are stepping out of line. So it could even be that the other missing legion had something along the lines of control or information propagation of some kind that stepped out of hand or were propagating the wrong information, seeding the wrong information. But whatever it was, it didn't.
Another thing about the word bearers is the chaplain order came from the word bearers, which is now in 40k. Everyone chaplains. He started off the chaplains, and Magnus started off the librarius. So these two things that are deep in 40k right now were both started by traitor Primarchs.
Yes.
That's worth mentioning. Lorgar. See, all the other Primarchs, like Angron, even though I shit on him earlier, I really like Angron. I really like a lot of their stories are really well written and they're complex. Perturabo's a bit. He's unfortunately not the. He's written two different ways.
He needs some help.
There's something good and something interesting and something noble you can say about every single Primarch story except Lorgar. I don't like him. He's an arsehole. The other thing about Lorgar is when he does turn traitor, when he does turn to the ruinous powers, as we know the word bearers do, he knows he's leading his legion into shit and terror and torture and horror and does it anyway.
Yeah.
He does it anyway. He is all the excuses he makes about themselves and all the blame he puts on other people. It's actually quite well written, actually.
Yeah.
You can cast that on him again and again and again. Lorgar's character, bottom line, is... See, like, you can't really say that Angron is evil. He's a tortured, broken soul with nails in his head, and he's trying to kill himself and trying to kill his legion. And the fastest he can do that, piss off the Big E, and is great. But Lorgar knows the difference between right and wrong. He knows what is morally good and what is morally... He knows these things and chooses the immoral path anyway, and chooses the path of torture and pain. He's a hypocrite. He's so hypocritical, and his logic and thought and thinking behind the Imperial Creed that he brings up before he even turns traitor, that is childlike. Yes. He's even his other Primarchs before Istvan look down on him. Even Horus and the others, they all have a certain amount of pity in Lorgar. He raised up 5 worlds while the Ultramarines raised up 500s while it had to be them. Lorgar is basically, he's an evil arsehole. He is the cackling cartoon villain in this piece, and he knows it, and I don't like him for it. You're not supposed to like him. See, the thing is, Erebus is a right arsehole as well, but I quite like Erebus because he's a cackling cartoon villain.
He is.
But he's funny with it. Yeah. He will stab you in the back and laugh while he's so you need that character. You know, like Joffrey in Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
No one liked Joffrey in Game of Thrones, but I liked him because he was so bad.
I like
characters that are so bad that they have no redeeming features whatsoever. It's like, this is awesome. This guy, like Cartman from South Park.
Yeah.
This guy's an absolute arsehole. He's fantastic. Love him.
But
Erebus is like that.
For the dynamic, yeah.
You need him there. But Lorgar, he's a pitiful, snivelling... He's a hypocrite is the main thing that I can't get my head around. He's immoral. He is evil. Because he knows what he's doing and he does it anyway and he wants to do it and he delights in it and he's hypocrite. Lorgar is just... I hate the bastard. Hate him. Which shows how well written he is because I'm an Imperial player at heart. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, I found his book a little tedious to get through, but I guess that is the nature of writing a character that behaves and thinks and acts, like Lorgar and how his legion would be. He's got some cool Astartes as well around him. I did enjoy some of them. I always forget their names though, but they've got all kinds of weird names. But the fact that they are a very important legion to the story in general because they are the first tastes of what is to come. They're the first tastes of chaos, possession, and
the first tastes.
The very first steps, which has created the landscape for what 40k is.
Well, there's a deeper level as well. Just one more thing. There is a deeper level when you're talking about a very important legion. And you think about the Emperor's motivations and the Emperor's goals and the things like that. The Emperor created a legion that no matter how much he would mould them and point them in the right direction, that they would espouse belief, the imperial truth as a religion, that they would espouse the Emperor as a god no matter. He created a Primarch and a whole gene lineage of religious worshippers, zealots, when he was trying to outlaw that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Why would he do that?
Yeah.
Unless he intended there to be this kind of zealotry. He intended there to be a spark. He intended... See, the crippling of Monarchia, and when the Ultramarines came around and destroyed Lorgar's home planet, and more than that, when Lorgar was made... They were made to kneel. Kneel, Malcador commanded. And they all collapsed down onto one knee as if an anvil had been placed on their heads. And even Lorgar took the knee beneath the power. I mean, Malcador was stood up there with Guilliman, with Valdor, with some of the Custodes, and said kneel. And they kneeled. No other legion was disgraced in this way. If you wanted to do something to piss off a zealot army... and a zealot Primarch and a zealot, if there was an ABC, tick this, the worst things you could do to turn this guy traitor, don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. Malcador and the Emperor ticked every single one of those boxes. So my first readings of the Horus Heresy, when I read it, I hated the first heretic. I hated all this stuff. I thought, this is too simple. This is too stupid. No one would fall for this. No one would do this. Why is the Malcador making these horrible mistakes? If I wanted to go to Lorgar and to his planet and have a word with him, but also he was censured before, he was brought back to Terra and had a chat with before. There is a better way to do this to ensure that you don't piss him and his entire legion off than this. This is stupid. The only reason why you would do it that stupidly and that bluntly is because you wanted to piss him off, and because you wanted to light that spark, and because there was a deeper plan in motion, wheels within wheels, which is why I think I put down the word bearers as Exhibit A, that the Emperor planned the heresy.
He was a wind-up merchant.
Here are the people who'll get it done. Them. Oh, they hadn't quite got it done yet? Okay, I'll send Malcador and some of the 10,000 and the Ultramarines. This will really piss them off. This will push them over the edge. Particularly if I do all these stupid things. Yes, and it did. And here we are.
Let's blow up his favourite city that he's spent ages on. You know, it's...
Yeah.
Right, we've got three legions. 3 Primarchs left.
Oh, and the word bearers, mass assault. That was their thing. Mass assault. They fight as a legion. 3 legions left. 18, the Salamanders.
The Salamanders, if you were a human, there were some good places to live. If you were an Astartes, you might like being in the Salamanders because their approach is slightly different to the other ones.
Yep.
The Salamanders, a slightly retconned chapter, I believe. But anyway... They are... Vulcan is an interesting character, isn't he? Because he's got a very special talent. And that
we won't spoil it, but he's got a very special talent.
Okay.
But his legion are known for resistance to radiation, resistance to heat, self-repair. They are more transhuman. It says so in the big rule book. It says so in they are more transhuman than the other transhuman space marines. It's not like the 10th Legion and the Death Guard, where they can endure and endure and endure and endure and endure. That's chemical, biological. These guys seem specifically designed for heat. Radiation, exposure, that type of thing, and self-repair. And they're also, right at the very start, the Imperial Guard loved them, the Zola Auxilia loved them, because right from the very start they were noted for the lengths that they would go to protect their allies and to ensure the people around them were safe as well. They also were quite selfless and independent and operate. By the time Vulcan got them, they were all over the place doing all sorts of things. Horus was using them for this, they were being used here because they were so self-reliant and they worked well with others so well. So here's clearly a gene seed.
Sorry, they have a little bit more compassion for your average human as well. I believe.
That's what I mean. They went to great lengths to ensure the survivability of the allies that they fought with. There's the Assault and Black Reach stuff where the Black Templars are like, well, we'll do this and we'll kill all this. And the Salamanders are like, well, what about the humans? And the Black Templars are, we don't care about that. We need to do this, this, and this. So the Salamanders go off and fight with the humans and help protect the humans.
Yes.
Yeah, right from the very start, they were like that. They are the good guys, of
yeah.
the Space Marine legions. They even still go back to, once they've ascended into their they still go back to the settlements and the towns that they were born in to spread their knowledge and spend some time.
Yes,
And
that was one of the things that I specifically remember, that they were allowed to kind of keep a somewhat of a relationship with the people they knew before.
Yeah.
Which, there's in stark contrast to that, you have Astartes in certain books. I won't point them out so that we don't spoil anything. But Astartes in certain books who can't quite remember their own mother's face, for example. And just another person. Doesn't matter. So they've got their purpose is quite clear. They're another good guy faction, and they are used when you need to bring the heat. And
bring the heat.
Yeah. And if you can't,
also semi-independent operations where you might need a company, or because again they were split up all over the place. So you'd have 10,000 guardsmen or 10,000 solar auxilia, and you might need a company of these guys to bring the heat in places that would kill the guardsmen, stuff like that. So right from the very start, they were designed to work alongside and with human auxiliaries. And there's a couple of Space Marine chapters, a couple of Space Marine legions that, along with the Word Bearers, for example, and one of the ones, and the one at the end, there were some Astartes legions who were clearly designed to work with the humans that they were fighting with, just as there were some legions like the World Eaters that were clearly not designed to work with anyone else. But Salamanders were.
Okay. The next legion, the next Primarch, really does speak for themselves. I mean, it's the Raven Guard, it's Corax. Going back to our favourite Primarch, Kurz, talks about the way that Corax can meld into a shadow, how something so huge, something so big can just step out of a dark corner. It's clear that he was blessed with slightly more than just a physical ability to blend in, right? So this is a Primarch. That's a great story.
I'm glad you remind me of Kurz, because everyone's afraid of Kurz. Everyone's afraid of the Night Haunter.
Yes.
And the only thing that Kurz is afraid of is Corax.
Yes. He has clearly got next level ability to do the stealth thing, right? And this is
so his Corax's ability is, if he doesn't go invisible, if he doesn't want you to see him, you won't see him.
Yeah.
I mean, indeed, after the drop site massacre at Isfahan 5, he walked through the traitor camps looking around at bodies and stuff like that. There's a couple, and they didn't see him. So everyone's got a power. Every one of the Primarchs can do one thing, and Corax's ability is, if he doesn't want you to see him coming, you won't see him coming. He can walk through a crowded room of people, a goddamn Primarch, 9-10 feet tall, superhuman in power armor, and you won't hear him, you won't see him, you won't smell him. He'll just go straight through the room. He hasn't gone invisible. It's not psychic taint. It's not and this is the thing. So on the battlefield of Isfahan 5, Kurz's gift is he can see a little bit into the future. He's got foresight. He's prescient. He can always see what's coming. He can always see the manner of his own death. He could always see that, but he didn't see Corax coming. He couldn't see him coming. And Corax busted a cap in his ass, yo. It was great.
They've got a fantastic...
and he's scared. Ever since then, he's scared. He has a nightmare. There's a bit in another book as well. He wakes up in terror, thinking, because he thought Corax can come and get him again. You know, the Raven Guard, stealth. Masters of stealth.
They
are the SAS,
which is lucky.
Of 40k.
It's lucky that they've given them that ability, because they are massive guys in massive, loud armour that is written in many books. It's written how much noise the power packs make. That... humans nearby, it's almost unbearable, the vibrations on their teeth from these bloody power packs. But these guys are stealthy, and they have obviously they are good at doing things that require stealth and sniping and inserting themselves into areas where they can hide and ambush people, which is
other legions can't insert.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the way in.
Reach places other things can't reach. Yeah. Guerrilla warfare, infiltration, stealth tactics, things like that. They're the Navy SEAL teams. Yeah. They're SAS. They're them. You can send in a small... They worked all the way through the Crusade. They pretty much worked hand in hand with Horus and the Lunar Wolves for a long period of time. He used just 100 here, 100 there, 100 there. You know, they're very, very good at what they do. Some of their ships don't even have void shields. Instead, they have stealth technology. Yeah. All that Geller fields, and they can float past. That's how they get out of Isfahan 5, is they literally float past all the battle fleets of the 8 traitor legions. They float out of the system without being seen, unless they were looking literally out the window to see the ship. Yeah, you wouldn't see it.
I just think it's a bit of a shame. I mean, their 40k aesthetic and their 30k aesthetic is kind of the black fringe emo, and then on top of that, it's like, if I don't want to be, no one can see me, no one cares. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a shame, but
they've all got pale skin and all that from Nocturne. So.
I do like them.
Yeah, the emo side they shouldn't have picked that.
No, they could have.
I like the Raven Guard as an idea. They can deploy at Legion strength as well, but of course the Emperor would have had something like this. Why send 10,000 where you only need to send 10?
Yeah.
And Korvac's pattern armor, which was named after him, and all the tech and all the way they describe the tech and what they do and how they function in the books, it fits so well. I like it.
And funnily enough,
they're cool as a Legion. They're cool.
They are cool,
I think.
And funnily enough, in the same theme of those as the final Legion, the fact that, again, you have another wildcard tool here in the Alpha Legion and Alfarius and Omegon, because they also excel at an unconventional method of dealing with enemies, right?
Yes. So this is one of those legions that have high number of cultists and human auxiliaries in as well. The way I like to describe it in very simple terms is the Raven Guard of the SAS, SEAL Team 6s, they're the special operations stuff. And the Alpha Legion are CIA or 007.
Yeah.
That's the basic way of explaining it.
Espionage.
They're the hidden blade.
Yeah,
you don't know if you're going to die until you die. They've changed whole planets without a shot being fired.
Yes.
There's loads and loads of secrets we could bust open about the Alpha Legion. But two of the best Primarch books is Valdor and Alfarius. The three best Primarch books so far, I believe, and I think a lot of people share, is Valdor and Alpha. Have you read Valdor and Alfarius?
No, I think I need to get onto those.
Yeah, because Valdor starts during the Unification Wars, and Alfarius starts kind of at the end of the Unification Wars. So they're good, not because of Valdor's barely in his own book, and that's the point of him. Alfarius is in his book all the way through. The opening line of the Primarch book, Alfarius, is "I am Alfarius."
Yeah.
And the last book line in the Primarch, his book, is "I am Omegon."
Okay.
How cool is that?
That's very cool. Yeah.
Actually, the second line after the first line is "I am Alfarius." That is a lie. That's the second bit. Anyway, because that's not his name.
No.
But yeah, they're really good books, not because they are the only two real whole books that deal with that period of history, but they also deal with almost all of the other stuff happening around them as well. And Alfarius's book, he's the hidden blade. He's the blade that you don't see coming. And there are rumours, so I don't want to spoil so much for people who don't know, but basically their origin story and when they appeared in the Horus Heresy is shrouded in mystery, and it depends who you talk to and depends where you talk to them. So some sources say that they didn't appear in the Great Crusade until towards the end of the Great Crusade. Some say that they were right before the Unification Wars, that there were some shadowy figures walking across Terra with these clearance things that could go. They go where they were in non-specific armor, a bit like the Knights Errant. that there were evidence of these weird unknown figures during the Unification Wars. What is known is that all of a sudden, at some point towards the end of the Crusade, a fully fledged legion appeared with its full fleet and veteran soldiers, tens of thousands of strong, to help the Space Wolves out. And it deals with that in the Alpharius book, like them suddenly going, okay, we need to show ourselves now. And they appear. But their origin and their mystery and their function is all shrouded in secrecy, and that's the point. You're not supposed to know about them. You're not supposed to know how they operate. They're the hidden blade, and it's really good. See, the legion size as well. We talked about the Ultramarines being the largest legion. So some accounts say that the Alpha Legion was the smallest legion, with only a few 10,000. But there are other verified accounts that say the Alpha Legion was the biggest legion by a very, very, very long way. We talk about 250,000 of Ultramarines. Some accounts put... It is arguable to say the Alpha Legion had 500,000 of them by the start of the Horus Heresy. But you don't know. No one really knows for sure. It depends how long they were around. It depends how long they were. What we do know is their gene seed almost shows almost no signs of corruption whatsoever. So you can stamp press these guys till the cows come home. They're not like Blood Angels or Thousand Sons. Yep. So they probably vastly exceeded other legions. They made sure that they fought along every single legion during the Great Crusade, and there are rumours when they fought along every legion in the Great Crusade that they did this on purpose to put some of their operatives in every single legion, and they've been there for dozens or a century, for a long period of time within. So if you're an Ultramarine player right now, you've probably got a couple of Alpha Legion inside.
I think Alpha Legion,
and his character is so good.
They've got a really good place for a very good writer to bring them into the 41st millennium in a really interesting way.
That was the thing. Just sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
No one knew before the start. So I remember reading the Horus Heresy. Did you read the Horus Heresy as it came out? It was great because no one knew anything about the Alpha Legion. We just knew that they were one of the least written chaos factions, and there was so little lore about them. And then Dan Abnett published Legion, and that sort of changed everything. It's like, whoa. Because he had a free reign to write these guys however they wanted to. So he clearly dug into that. Okay, no one knows about these guys, why and how and where and came up with this CIA James Bond thing. He just blew me out of the water there. And then the other good books where the Alpha Legion are in, just they go down and down and down and down the rabbit hole. The many heads of the Hydra. I love it. The Alpha Legion is so interesting. And they can deploy, just one last thing, they can deploy at Legion strength when they need to, because they did to help the Space Wars out, and they did a couple of times through the Heresy. They're still, the other thing about them to remember is they're still Space Marines.
Yes.
And they're well armoured, they're well supplied, they're well trained, they've got all the kit, they've got all the stuff, and if they need to crack open a planet, they'll crack open a planet. If they need to show display a show of force, they'll display a show of force. They're still Space Marines. But one of these guys, I mean, there's a Horus Heresy short story where one of these guys takes a planet. Yep. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Because they're smart as well. They're
a very specific tool.
I love them.
In that Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
If you need to, if you want to have absolutely everything without force, these guys were the only chance you had of doing that. Because even the Night Lords, even if you frighten an army if you frighten a planet into submission, you've still made a devastating impact on them, right? It's going to change how they see you and change how they deal with things. The Alpha Legion have got the ability to essentially shape, because of the length of their plans as well. They can shape the course of those people, so there's no transition. It is just how they want it, and it's fantastic. And I will add Alfarius and Valdor as my next. I'm reading.
So have you read the Kurz book?
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, Kurz is the best Primarch novel, right? A lot of people, I mean, it's, in my humble opinion, people have different opinions, but Kurz comes highly recommended by almost everyone.
Yeah.
You need to read Valdor before you read Arferis as well. Not because they're connected at all, they're not connected, but because the timeline kind of is. Valdor is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They work well together as a two, and they're both written very, very well.
Yeah. I took a strange route with the Horus Heresy, because I obviously read the initial 3 books, and then Flight of the Eisenstein. Is it
Eisenstein?
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, but I want to know what happens with these guys. I really like these guys, and then I ended up going off on a tangent with the Iron Warrior stuff with Iron Warriors. So I went off to Angel Exterminatus and the Dark Angels books and things like that. So there are little gaps all throughout it that I need to go back to and read. And I haven't read any of the new Solar War series, so
yeah,
I need to do that at some point. But yeah,
unfortunately, the problem with the Horus Heresy is the first 4 books are so good, that none of the other books. Only very few of the other books come close to that level of scale. Like Vulcan Lives, Betrayal, Imperium Secundus comes very close. The Solar War. Wow, no, there are some other segments that come close or equal to the first 4 books, but the first 4 books are just so outstanding. And then you go into Fulgrim, and then Mechanicum, and then and I only really appreciated those books the second or third time. Well, the second time around, you appreciate them much, much more. Did you know something else about Horus Heresy that I found out the other day as well?
What's that?
You can't get all the books now. They're not even in print in the Black Library. So if you want to read all of the Horus Heresy, there's only 2 ways to get all the books. One is on Kindle. They're all on Kindle. And one is on Audible. They're all on Audible. But if you actually want to buy and own the books, like someone sent me a comment saying it's a shame I got this far and I can't find the next one. I have to. So I went on for a mad search for it, and it's like, you know what? He was right. And there was some on eBay selling for like 200 quid and shit.
Yeah, it's rough.
And I got them down there.
Yeah.
And then I've got them all on Kindle as well. And now I'm listening to all them on Audible. But, Audible, I'm up to, because I'm listening to Audible now for the first time, and I'm up to Prospero Burns now.
Nice. Do you find that there is a real disparity between sort of narrators? Like, I really like, there are certain narrators I can really get into. So I read the first 4 books I read on Kindle. No, actually, sorry, the first book I read a physical copy of, and then the other ones I remember finishing the first book at something like 8 o'clock in the evening, and thinking that I really wanted to get the next book, but I was like, I'm going to have to get it on Kindle, even though I wanted the physical book of it, because I've got to start this right now. And honestly, the worst thing about the Horus Heresy is, like you said, those first 4 books are so damn good that as soon as you hit the next, the drop in tempo even of the books that come after it, it's quite jarring. And actually I took a step back.
It is quite jarring.
Then had to step back in. But Audible has made it really good, because when I tend now, if I'm going on a long journey, I'll grab a one of the books and I'll listen to it over the course of a few days while I'm driving and stuff, and you can fit it in on the side, which is fantastic. But I
would have thought you were more of a Radio 4 kind of man when you were driving, though.
Exactly, but I've had to give up Radio 4 just to listen to Jonathan Keeble tell me about what the Space Marines have been up to. Jonathan
Keeble and Toby Longworth, those two knock it out of the park whenever they're and I've had conversations with people about which one is better. I like them both. But yeah, some of the narrators sound like they're reading it.
Yes.
Whereas Toby Longworth and Jonathan Keeble sound like they're telling you a story. And that makes all the difference. But yeah, man, no more Radio 4 for you. Awesome.
Why is it being rude? Oh, I know why. Who narrated the Night Lords books?
It's one of those two, because they're really well narrated. Jonathan Keeble or Toby Longworth. It's one of them.
I think he even No, it's Andrew Wincott. Andrew
Is it?
Wincott
Okay.
did the Curse books, the Curse book, and the Night Lords books. He blows everybody out the water, as far as I'm concerned. I like a bit of Jonathan Keeble, but this guy, wow, this guy, Andrew Wincott, is the one. Anyway, we've just gone through
the Audible series. The first time it falls off actually is Thousand Suns. I don't know who did that one.
Terrible.
They're all really, really good. And then Thousand Suns is because he every now and then you can tell he's reading, not just telling you a story.
And it doesn't sound
the Thousand Suns book, the Thousand Suns book is so good for all the stuff that's not about a Thousand Suns. Like it does, and it's so slow to get going. All of Graham McNeil books typically slow to get going, but once they get going, they're like a snowball, an avalanche that's picked up momentum. Like it's slower at the start, but you go to Ullanor and you meet the other Primarchs for the first time. You go to Nicaea and you see that. You go to the Emperor's throne room for the first time, and then you get it's one of those books that, I mean, when I recommend the series in the shortest possible form, you don't really need to do Thousand Suns Prospero Burns because everyone knows what happens there. But and also because a number of people start a Thousand Suns and say, it's really hard. And I had a conversation with Jerome about it actually, and he was like, well, it kind of sucked because he was like 3 hours in and it was just about But I said, no, you got to stick with it. You're gonna go to Ullanor. You're gonna go to these places, and it's gonna, like Mechanicum, which Graham McNeil does, really low, slow start. But you're on Mars before the war, and you get to see the Magma City, and you get the places he takes you to. Like in the Solar War, he's the guy. He's the guy. Like, because Graham McNeil started off inside. He didn't start off as a novelist. He started off inside the studio, writing or designing or games or White Dwarf or something. So he's a fan that got to where he is. He's the guy who's like. In the Solar Wars, like the other guys will stay away from the Golden Throne, but Graham McNeil is like, right, we're going to the Golden Throne. I'm going to take you there. I'm going to show you what it's like. The other guys will stay away from. I don't know if they'll stay away from, but maybe that's unkind. I don't know. But Graham McNeil, you can feel the joy coming out of the pages. He's like, I want to write about this. No one's written about what the Golden Throne Room looks like and the very inside of the thing. We've had some touches here or there. We've had some vague descriptions here or there. We've had some he will describe it in a way. Graham McNeil is very wordy. He likes to use more words, is what I'm saying. So, okay, let's rewind all of this because I'm very aware that I might be stamping on some other toes. Some other authors will talk about the stuff that Graham McNeil talks about, but Graham McNeil will go into layers of detail, which a nerd like me absolutely loves. Yeah. And sometimes it might break the narrative flow, but God bless him for it. Man, Mechanicum is so good. Thousand Suns is so good.
It's very easy for 40k novels to become, I think people call it bolter porn, right? It is great to have someone really think about all the rest of the time that surrounds these people, these players, who are the world that they live in, the universe that they live in, and the things they deal with is just on a completely another level. And to have to think about how characters think and feel and what they do in these situations, and not write it as a cackling Saturday morning cartoon villain or a Superman. Everything I do is for good. To find the balance between that is an art, and the guys who get it right it's fantastic. And I don't mind reading about thoughts and feelings and places and stuff that isn't perpetual action driving this epic story onwards. We can get the flavour of 40k through those things. So it's fantastic.
God bless him for it.
God bless him.
Yeah,
but I think I need to do what you did. I think I need to go back for round 2 on a lot of books that I've read, whether I do it through Audible or on the Kindle. because it is a lot to take in. The series is not one that I think everyone can just go, oh, I'm going to go read 57 books or whatever and get the first part done in a row. It is heavy going, and it's not consistently written. It's not one author, and that's the important distinction there, is that you're not reading one author's work. You're reading a collection of ideas from people who we can assume are somewhat passionate about the subject that they're writing, we hope. Some of them are. But anyway, this is a huge tangent, Winters. We were talking about the Emperor's Toolkit. The Emperor's Toolkit, which was his Primarchs, his legions, the roles that they performed, and the things that his boys, his sons, could do. And we've summarised it there. There will be, obviously, there's going to be a lot more as we go on through the storyline. There's a lot more specifics about individual Primarchs and individual Astartes from their legions, and how they affect the universe. But that's where we're going to leave it for now. And as we've talked about already, we do need to get the other side of the picture. The Horus Heresy, fundamentally, this is before big story, like there are Xenos involved and things like that, but this is before big storylines involving other races. This is fundamentally the Imperium and Chaos and what happened there. So we need to look at what Chaos was going on with, and we're going to look at the Chaos gods, how they were getting involved in this, and how they seeped into a setting which they aren't known in initially. They aren't there. How did these guys, who are a central part of the 41st millennium, just suddenly appear? How did they get involved? And we'll be taking a look at that on the next episode.
We'll do the Chaos side of things next, I think. Yes, good. Anyway, thank you very much. You'll bring your chaos, your full chaos. Full chaos. I'll bring full
chaos. I've got a few things. I know a few things about the Chaos Gods. A few stories I can tell.
Good. But that was great fun. Thanks, Chris. 1 minute. Are you wearing a different set of glasses today?
Yes, I'm so glad you noticed. These are my
I knew something was different about you.
I thought I'd switch up my glasses, change my look a bit, because I look the same every.
They make you look younger. It's good.
Thanks, man. That's very kind of you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember what we said about the questions. We're serious. Come and leave a question on Discord, and we will look at ways to make episodes, or fit it into episodes, or make episodes about it. And then you could watch along with us and be like, yay, questions and answers, and Winters is telling me all the things that I ever wanted to know, and Chris is saying something. Who knows what he's saying? So do that. Make sure you do that. And in the meantime, look after yourself. Go make another cup of tea, because your previous one's gone cold. You've been glued to the screen. And I hope you have a wonderful time, and we'll see you soon. Yeah?
Do we wave?
You can wave. Yeah. I thought you were going to give some kind of parting
Happy
comment.
wargaming. What? No, I thought you did it really well there. You did it well.
Thanks. Happy wargaming. Bye. Bye. Love you. Thanks.